So my name's Stephen Hamill. I'm Director of Design and Innovation at NBS, and I'm going to give an update on how the BIM Toolkit developments are coming on. I'm a project lead on this project at NBS, and it's a project that's funded by Innovate UK, what was formerly known as the UK Technology Strategy Board, and the main client, the UK government's BIM task group. So this is where the government's BIM journey all started in 2011 with a UK government mandating what they classed as level 2 BIM from 2016 on all centrally funded government projects. And if you go back to 2011 and look at what the hypothesis was, is that government as a client can derive significant improvements in cost, value, and carbon performance through the use of information, open shareable asset information. And that's information that's valuable, it's understandable, it's not just for the 2 or 3% of the industries that sit at the cutting edge of BIM. It's general, so it's across all of the disciplines, it's through the project timeline. And then the next few, 4, 5, 6, non-proprietary, it creates a competitive environment about an open standard data that's verifiable, as I say, compliant with standards. And back in 2011, it was decided that it would be a 5-year program. It was going to be small steps. It wasn't something that would happen at the click of a finger. And it had a certain amount of funding attached, the funding for the BIM task group and for the authoring and production of the standards and projects such as this one. And then moving on 2 or 3 years, I think the government strategy 2025 is a really clear, well laid out, very well thought document. And on the first couple of pages there, it lists the main objectives of what the government wants to achieve in the UK in terms of its construction strategy. Lower costs, faster delivery, lower emissions, and upskilling the UK industry, better exports for professional services, construction, manufacturer products. And if we read that document throughout, it talks about digital technologies and standard processes being a big enabler to achieving these objectives. And those sort of digital technology standard processes, maybe what those 3 letters BIM really stand for. So completing the level 2 BIM suite, what is level 2 BIM as defined by UK government? It's a set of standards and guidance documents, such as the BIM protocol, the government soft landings, the PAS 1192 series, the COBie data schema, and the 2 sort of missing parts of the jigsaw from about 12 months ago were classification levels of definition for deliverables in the construction industry, and also a free-to-use digital plan of work tool to create that standardized process that can really fit nicely into that level 2 suite of documents and tools. So back in January 2014, the brief came out for this project, as I say, funded by Innovate UK, and it was a two-phase competition, with the first phase being a feasibility study to have 6 weeks to sort of de-risk the project, which we were fortunate enough to lead a team NBS, and then we were fortunate enough to, again, based on what we proposed in the feasibility study, to win the 6 months of funding to develop this, and then post April the 13th at the end of the funding, take it to market. And if you have a little look at across our team there, you can see you've got NBS, ourselves, and then different leaders in the different sectors that we thought we needed to create a small agile team. So BIM Academy on the BIM technology side, BDP for multidisciplinary design management on the building side, Mott MacDonald on multidisciplinary design on the infrastructure side, Lang O'Rourke with their experience of construction, offsite manufacturer, costing. Microsoft is a technology partner, and Newcastle University is an academic technology partner as well. And then once we were awarded the contract at October the 13th, we were fortunate enough to receive the backing of industry in terms of some of the major construction institutions, from the Association of Project Management through to Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. And we meet with this group of 8 construction institutions every 4 weeks to act as a sort of steering board to look at how we're progressing and steer our progress. We're really grateful for those 8 organisations in particular. So what is the BIM Toolkit, and how does it sort of fit into this level 2 BIM suite of documents and tools? We'll look mainly here at PAS 1192 Part 2. This is freely available at the BSI website. Little hyperlink below there, bsigroup.com/BIM. And this is the big illustration of the project lifecycle from the PAS 1192 standard. Thanks to Mervyn Richards for allowing us to use his illustration that he did for the PAS. And what you can see is a project starts here with assessment of need at the strategy stage, and then goes round this loop through the brief, through the design phases, construction, handover, and then you're into the operation and use phase. And a repeat client's going to have more and more assets that get built, and they can assess how these assets use. And then the next time there's a new build project or refurbishment or demolition, you can start again, assess your needs, assess your current estate, and then go through that loop again. And the PAS documents well laid out in the various sort of main sections here: assessment and need, procurement, in terms of the bidders coming together on the initial contract, the contract being awarded and sort of mobilizing through and setting up your master information delivery plan, going through the design and construction phases, and then handing over the asset information back to the client at the end. So let's just have a look at a few of those stages in a bit more detail and show how the BIM Toolkit actually assists the industry in those stages. So let's have a little look at assessment and need. Here, the sort of first big stage, that strategic stage at the start. And this is where the clients ultimately, even repeat clients, intelligent clients, they're not necessarily construction experts, and they're determining their needs just through plain language questions that you'd ask around the boardroom table, if you like. What information do we need at the stages of the project? And the document that the PAS document talks about preparing a document called Employers' Information Requirements. They're the requirements in terms of information to meet the needs of those original plain language questions that any client may want to know the answers to as the project's developing. So those information requirements are aligned to the project stages, and this is part of that initial tender documentation package. And it's about procuring information in addition to procuring the building and the various services that are offered. So here's a little screenshot of BIM Toolkit where we're at after just over 4 months worth of developing. And what you can see here is this is the logged on area. So I've created an account. You're logged on. This is one of the guys in our design team, Chris, and he's working on 4 different projects. And you can have a little look at them in tile view, a list view, sort them by last updated or reference number, and come and open one of these projects. When you open the projects, if you think right at the top level, you've got various properties at the project level. Things like what's the project reference, the title, the address, a description of the project, the location. etc. If you then move down through the project, it's divided into the 0 to 7 work stages. And each of those work stages, even though you might still be at the strategic stage, preparing your employer's information requirements, you may want to add details to that work stage, the expected stage deadline, when you'd like construction to start, what your budget is, maybe things like what environmental assessment at a sort of whole project level you're going to use in terms of your sustainability agenda. And then if you have a little look further down the left-hand side here, you can see you can assign roles to that particular stage, tasks and deliverables. So if you imagine, again, we're at that strategic stage where I'm the client that's logged on here, Newtown County Council. At this stage, the project team might just be 2 or 3 organizations. You haven't assembled the full project team yet. It's pre-contract, pre-main contract stage. So you can see that a lot of the roles at the briefing stage are still left blank. As I move down the tabs on the left-hand side, you can see that the toolkit comes populated with some default tasks. And we've got some default tasks for typical building projects that have been developed from some of the hard work done by the RIBA Plan of Work Multidisciplinary Schedule of Services team. And you can see here, prior to the project really getting going, these tasks are assigned to a role as opposed to being assigned to a particular organization. It's pre-contract stage, so you know that you'd like to have the project lead reviewing the project program and feasibility study, but you don't know who that project lead is quite yet. We're also going to have template tasks for the infrastructure sector, so we've been having workshops with the likes of Highway Agency, Environment Agency. So when you start a project, you don't have to start with a blank sheet of paper. You can start with some well thought through standard tasks for either building or infrastructure projects. And each of these tasks are aligned to the likely role, so the civil engineer, the project lead, the information manager, and the likely stage. It's quite important, that model of here's a project, it's split into a number of stages, and within the stages you have roles, tasks, deliverables. And as the project develops from employers' information requirements through to professional appointments, more and more information gets added to this digital plan of work. As I mentioned earlier, these are a template set of tasks, so you can remove them all if you want and start from the tasks that are right for your own particular project. You can remove a few, you can modify them, you can add your own. So you can see here in this example, maybe the client's working with the client advisor to really analyze the needs from their plain language questions and document the tasks that they need to answer their questions at the various stages. So here's a task I'm adding here: consult with local residents and community groups. That will be the responsibility of the project lead once they're appointed, and I can add a few little notes against it. And that then sort of drops into those list of tasks. And this is information that can be set up and reused again and again. So if you're, as a client, all you do is build residential buildings, you can set it up for your typical project and use it again and again. If you're not a client, but you're a design manager, maybe an architect or a civil engineer or a contractor, and you work on similar types of jobs again and again, you can set up the tasks that are right for jobs that you manage as well. And what's really important to say, going back to those very first principles on the government hypothesis, is that this is open data, it's documented, it's to a standard structure, and whenever you want, you can export this information out of the toolkit and use it how you wish. So I've got a little diagram illustrating this. Here's the information within the online free-to-use BIM Toolkit, and by clicking export, there's a number of different formats. We've got a nice user-friendly Microsoft Office format. So traditionally, employers' information requirements are written in sort of Microsoft Word format. You can quickly copy and paste those tasks and deliverables aligned to the stage into the section of the employer's information requirements that details the information requirements at each stage. There's a really good example employer's information requirement document on the BIM Task Group website. I've got that URL later on, but I think there's a section, I can't remember, the 2.4, which contains this data island, so to speak. And in addition to that, you can export it to COBie IFC format, which is computer readable. So when other software vendors out there or large organizations with software development houses want to analyze this information and work with it, maybe do comparisons, that's there in the open standard structure as well. And we're really thankful to our partners, BIM Academy, for the support they're giving us there. And then that island of data that defines the digital plan of work keeps on jumping to the next stage. So you're pre-contract, and you've got bidders that want to respond to the employer's information requirement with their pre-contract BIM execution plan, using the terminology from the PAS again. And they can take that export from the client and modify it within the BIM toolkit and propose back the responsibility of their supply chain and say where they can add additional value, maybe where they'd like to adjust tasks based on their expertise. And the client can receive all of this back in a standard format, so they can compare the different competencies of the bidders when it comes to information management and BIM. So selection can take place in amongst all of the other criteria that's obviously important on projects as well. I think nobody involved in the BIM world says that information management and technology and process is everything. This is just one of the things that's important alongside all of the other capabilities of teams involved in construction industry. So what we can see on this screenshot is the bidder, this chap at the top right, is imported that information in from the employer's information requirements. They'll put down their proposed project team. They'll say which of the project teams are proposed to take each of the roles at the various stage. And that's quite important, the relationship between a team member and a role. So at stage 2, the civil engineer may play the role of the project lead, the design lead, the civil engineer, the information manager, the health and safety advisor, etc. But you can have one organization that fulfills 6 or 7 different roles at any stage. And organizations fulfilling the roles can change as the project goes on. So the project lead could be an architect from stages 1, 2, and 3, and then the role of the project lead changes to a main contractor when you get to stage 4. The toolkit has that complete flexibility that however project teams want to work, whatever procurement strategy they choose, that's sort of taking out of the equation, and it's flexible enough to deal with all of those different approaches. And what you can see now is for each item, each task, each deliverable, there's actually a name against the role. So the organization of SJH Consult is fulfilling the role of project lead at stage 2, and they had a particular task, develop the project execution plan, whatever that task is, down there. And just like with the employer's information requirement document, this information can then be exported out and copied and pasted into a pre-execution BIM execution plan, or pre-contract BIM execution plan, and equally exported out into IFC COBie so it can be digitally reused and checked, compared. And that journey continues. I won't talk too much about every single stage because I'll probably sort of maybe lose a few people and bore people a bit, but it continues through. There's the mobilization, the period where you're putting together your master information delivery plan, adding more information, and then you come into the production stage. And maybe spend a little bit of time here, a little bit of focus on this stage, because I think it's of particular interest. And this is where you're going from the design supply chain, construction supply chain, and you're growing the federated project information model. What the digital plan of work does is defines the what, the when, and the who. Quite simple, complex. Really, it's a matrix that says who is doing what and when it comes to information management. It's not pushing the boundaries in terms of software technologies in the BIM world with 3, 4, 7, 8D, whatever people want to get excited about in terms of BIM technologies. It's doing a simple job of saying this is who's doing what and when. And that allows those information exchanges between the supply chain now, not necessarily just the client and the project lead, to take place. And all the way back, these information exchanges should be filtering back to those original plain language questions that the employers asked for at the start of the project, at that strategy brief stage. And the fact that it's on open standards and it's documented classification and data structures allows for digital verification. So let's see a few screenshots from the BIM Toolkit 4 months in as to how this works a little bit further into a project. So it's the same project here, Morning Sun Country Park, but we're now at stage 4, which you're really getting into technical design. And instead of showing tasks, I'm showing deliverables. And some of the terminologies needs tweaked. This is still the software and development. But these are the deliverables of stage 4. And what you can see is we've got concrete piling system, heavy steel frame, door sets, curtain wall, green roofs. And against each of these, there's a classification. There's a role, the architect, the structural engineer, the building service engineer. And each of these roles at stage 4 is being fulfilled by a particular organization on that collaborative team. So the role of architect is ABC architect. And you can see you can put a short description against each of these deliverables. So it's a bit small on screen, but just read it out. Extensive green roof system. The client has specifically asked for a green roof for the extension of the visitor centre. They would like to see a range of options from manufacturers that are on the market from an early stage. And they'd like the project team to consider a particular local manufacturer, maybe in terms of their sustainability ambitions, in terms of sourcing locally, etc. And that's captured there. So it's very clear that ABC architects, by the end of stage 4, have got to deliver the information associated with the green roof system. And then the question is, how much information do they have to deliver? And that's what you can see on the right-hand side here through the levels of definition. And they're split into level of detail and level of information. And if I click on there here, we'll just have a look at what's inside there. This is typically done at the moment through referring to 1 to 100 drawings or 1 to 50 drawings, or maybe referencing American standards. There's nothing really in the UK for BIM projects that says for this banding of level of detail what is expected. Now this is where we're working with our partners BDP, Mott MacDonald, and also Lang O'Rourke to give some typical bandings for typical stages. And the user has the flexibility to change these. So if you're at stage 4, you maybe only want to have level of detail 3 or level of information 3. Or you can change them, and it's all transparent. It's there. And that's just a click away. It's a completely integrated cloud system that for all of these deliverables at the various stages, you can clearly say what is required, and then add further notes to maybe just add a little bit of sort of project-specific information there as well. So that shows a typical LOD for a green roof, the banding 4, level of detail, and if you jump across there, you can see level of information as well. And this is the information associated with the geometry. So they're saying we want to have essentially a performance specification here that covers the design standards, the structural performance, fire performance, hydraulic performance. And that's as far as this tool goes. It's not going to allow you to do your design here. You don't do your specification here. You've got to go elsewhere and use tools such as AutoCAD or Revit or NBS or Microsoft Word or Excel. This is in this stage, the design lead saying who is doing what and when. And the complexity of what software tools to use is not the design lead. It's not the client's leads. That's not their problem. That's the supply chain's problem. What the design lead in this situation's problem is making sure that everything's coordinated, all of the responsibilities are there, and the project team knows who is doing what and when. You can add your own items. Every project's different, and we've got between 5,000 and 6,000 of these definitions. So in this example here, I'm adding a deliverable to stage 4. I've typed in the word boiler, and you can see there's a selection of 6 or 7 different oil-fired, gas-fired, all of which have the level of definition guidelines. So you pick the object that's correct for that project. And then it jumps across and says, okay, who's responsible for this deliverable? Building service engineer, who happens to be the company Wires and Fires. Add a description, pick the LOD and LOI, add the deliverable, and that sort of drops into the project. What I just want to demonstrate here is I've picked LOD banding 2, which is typical of your sort of concept design stage. And you can see at this stage the geometry is very basic, but it's considering the operations phase in terms of maintenance zones. Going back to that level 2 package of documents, in tools, the government soft landings guidance talking about considering operating the building, the government soft landing champion on right from the start of the project to ensure that there's no nasty surprises when you get the handover. As you move to LOD 5 here, you can see the geometry, the details are far more advanced and enough to sort of build from. Jumping across the level of information, at an early stage it's very small, just maybe description, talking about the design intent, and that grows all the way through until we get a level of information 6, which are your handover properties as defined by COBie. Installation dates, replacement costs, expected life, manufacturer model, etc. And this is the information that ultimately at the end of stage 6 going to be in a standard format, so software routines can be written to pull or push that into a asset management system. So just moving out of the context of a project now, just looking at some of the definitions from our reference library, 5,000 or 6,000 of these. Here's an example, LOD 4, that's been developed by Mott MacDonald, part of the core team for a bridge expansion joint. And on the LOD side, you can see the typical geometric detail. On the LOI side, the information, it will be things such as maybe the thermal performance, the slip resistance, the durability, etc. So not just buildings, but infrastructure too. Bridges, tunnels, and then sectors such as aviation, water, waste, highways, rail, power. We'll look at example solar heating system here, again from our level of definitions library. And you can see we've got a prime classification, the new version of Uniclass. Don't think the name's completely official yet, but there's the prime classification. We'll have that sort of front and center. But what you can also see here, working with RICS that are part Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, part of the core team now, they're providing mappings to the sections within their rules of measurement NRM1 document to allow that digital object that represents the physical to have different facets of classification. And we'll be looking to extend that post-April as well, so that we have a sort of standard unified classification system, but also respect some of the most used current systems for things such as rules of measurement and classification. And staying on classification, you can see you've got a number of different class tables, spaces, product systems, elements. When you do a search, I'm searching for classrooms here, you can see that it returns product systems and spaces. So you could have furniture systems for classrooms, or a storage unit, which is a product for a classroom, or you could have a primary or a secondary or a home economics classroom. And as you click the filters, you can get all of the items from the same classification class together. So I'm not interested in systems and products at that briefing stage. I'd like to see just the classifications for the spaces. I've just got a little slide on the principles of unit class, which is aligned to the framework from ISO 12006 Part 2. It says the international standard, which outlines the framework for a unified classification system. And there's a number of different classification tables. A little example could be the complex table. In this example, a complex could be a holiday village, could be a university or a highway network. Then you can move down to an entity, that could be a bridge or a tunnel or a building. This table is also for activities. So inside that building, you may have dining, you may have cooking, you may have dancing, external dining areas. And then you can apply those activities to the various spaces. So you could have a school gymnasium that's used for basketball, dancing, and teaching and eating, and elements. And then ultimately coming down to systems and products. And these systems and products are what are typically provided by construction manufacturers. So you could have a system such as a ceiling system, which ultimately is provided by a manufacturer, for example, Armstrong Ceilings. Or you could have a product that could be a ceiling tile or a fastener as part of the ceiling system, or down to the level of adhesive that's part of the floor covering system. So it's a unified classification system across the different construction sectors, including civil engineering, that has different tables for the different scale of objects, all the way from a complex, like a university, down to a product which could be a steel fastener. And what we want to do is to take the complexity out of the classification system by having a really strong search engine. So what I've done here is I've searched for burglar alarm. I'm not an expert in classification, and I don't know, and frankly maybe don't care what it's being called, but by searching for burglar alarm, it's returned the classification and level of definition guidelines for intruder detection in an alarm system. And got plenty of examples there in our search engine, which is improving all the time. Things like you search for living roof and you can find green roof. You search for McAdam and you find asphalt concrete. Search for galvanized with an S and you find galvanized with a Z. But I think we want to really sort of take away that complexity around classification and just make it a user-friendly digital interface that people can find things quickly and easily with. So, as I said, the digital plan of work's quite a simple tool that models a project saying what's going to be delivered by who and when. And the complexity is in the supply chain to use whatever clever bits of software they choose. The government doesn't mandate any proprietary software that you've got to pay for. You use whatever you want, but that supply chain, the architects, the civil engineers, structural engineers, cost consultants, they've got to work together and collaborate to provide the information that's been asked for, the information that's been defined in the digital plan of work. On the verification, the validation side, again, all around open data format. And what the BIM Academy have done, they've looked at IFC, and the schema's a little bit too rich for the needs of this project. COBie in terms of Microsoft Excel. COBie's been criticized quite a lot in terms of its Microsoft Excel side. It's a bit loose. It's hard to work with in terms of keeping things to a really sort of strict data schema. So we've got an XML version of COBie working with the BIM Toolkit, which can interchange between, you can take the COBie, what I think BIM Academy are calling COBie Lite XML, into IFC, into COBie XL, and then back again without losing any information. And one thing they've done really nicely here on the IFC side is just added a little bit of geometry. I'm getting a little bit technical here, but every single deliverable, every single task can be represented by a little cube. So this is opened in, is it ArchiCAD, or I think this is Celebri, but you're seeing all of the items in the digital plan of work as a little, looks like bar chart or Tetris. And that's just proven that information can be passed from one system to another without losing that information by using open standards such as the Building Smart data schemas. And then ultimately the building or the construction project, the road, the highway is completed, and that digital information is getting handed back to the client for their asset management team to use on a daily, a monthly basis. And that's the sort of final stage, going from stage 6 into stage 7. And this is where the PAS 1192 part 3 sort of kicks in. But just as a real nice simple example to finish on, your building's complete, you can go to a physical asset in the building, and one that the client's particularly interested in because they've got to operate it. And that physical asset is linked to its digital representation in the asset management system. So that it will have an ID, it's got a classification, it knows it's a gas-fired boiler, it knows what space it's in the plant room, which is on a particular level, level 1, and it's got key properties such as manufacturer, model, expected life, a link to the O&M manual. So that information can be queried digitally, and it's not a case of a facility manager going down to the boiler room and having to look at something that was installed 6 or 7 years ago where there's absolutely no documentation at all. That can be looked at digitally prior to the visit, prior to the planned maintenance, and by doing that, that information's there sort of proactively, so situations can be fixed in sort of one visit, as opposed to taking days or weeks to sort out problems as they occur during the operation phase. So I think that brings me to the end of the presentation. If any of your colleagues are interested in this, as I say, we have the video on the BIM tool, the mbs.com/BIM Toolkit. My colleague Stefan Mordew is doing this presentation again tomorrow, and then I'm doing it on Friday as well. The whole NBS team, or a lot of the NBS team, will be at Ecobuild next week. So if you want to come and meet any of us sort of face-to-face, have a chat, and maybe play with some of the functionality, we'll be at Ecobuild on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at the BIM seminar area. I can't speak highly enough of the BIM Task Group government website. And if you're interested in sort of following developments on social media, please send out a few tweets. If you're a Twitter sort of person, on #BIM Toolkit. I know I'm always interested to look at the feedback there as well. We'll be doing a soft launch of the BIM Toolkit at BIM Show Live in Manchester on April the 8th. So if you are looking to go to one BIM conference over the next 2 or 3 months, BIM Show Live is always one of the main dates in the UK BIM calendar. And if you like, there's still time if you want to beta test the BIM Toolkit. If you go to our website, there's details on how to do that. So I think that's my last slide. Let me just jump across and see what questions have come through, and I'll maybe spend 9 or 10 minutes having a little look at some of the questions that came through here. Okay, so there's quite a few questions saying, looks great, thank you. Thanks for all the positive comments. We got a question from Louise asking how much the program costs. Everything I've demonstrated is completely free to use. It's a free toolkit, free classification system, free level of definitions. Classification and definition you can access in the public area to create your own digital plan of work. You just need to add a username and password, and you can get going. So yeah, completely free. A question of Jacob. Can you expand on the interface between digital plan of work and the BIM execution plan? What I'd say, Jacob, is maybe download the example BIM execution plan from the BIM Task Group website, and you'll see there's the section which is the response to the employer's information requirements. You'll be able to export out of the digital plan of work and copy and paste that into that section of the BIM execution plan. It won't create a BIM execution plan in its entirety, but it will create that section which is the response to the employer's information requirements. We got a question from Gavin. Are you at BIM Show Live? Yes, we are. and on day one of BIM Show Live, I'll be presenting this on stage one with Dave Philp, the head of BIM for the BIM task group, and also Professor Steve Lockley, who's been doing some amazing work on the IFC, the Building Smart side of things as well. Paul's asking if we can send the presentation out. Pretty much the same presentations already online, Paul, on mbs.com/BIM Toolkit. There's a little video there. And keep an eye on my blog as well, because I always do some sort of sneaky previews of the screenshots when our marketing team aren't watching. So maybe search Stephen Hamill blog and you'll see the very latest stuff as well. Andrea's asking when the latest edition of Uniclass will be published. We're aiming to do that at the soft launch, which will be the April 8th BIM Show Live as well. Can I explain the functionality of Kobe? Question of Ty. Ty, I think that's going to be too hard to do in the next few minutes, but I can absolutely fully recommend the YouTube videos from Bill East from the United States. So if you go to YouTube and search Kobe Bill East, I think there's about an hour's worth of materials that he gives us. He's the guy that invented Kobe in the States. Fantastic presentations. He's a great presenter. Definitely recommend that. Is the Uniclass latest version, so Simon asking the question, going to be available prior to April 11th for April 8th for comment? We're already sharing that with the institutions and some of the groups below the institutions, but we plan to put the tables on the mbs.com/BIM Toolkit in the next few weeks too. So any comments appreciated. Thank you, Simon. Is it compulsory to use BIM Level 2 projects from Gavin? The government are going to mandate Level 2 BIM on centrally funded projects. I expect the private sector will follow and are already following, because they don't want to reinvent a new process, a new system, especially when government Level 2 BIM is so well researched and so sensible. Will the toolkit itself be mandated? I think it'll be encouraged, but if somebody wants to do this in Microsoft Excel, they won't be sort of kicked out of government projects, but I think it's by and far the easiest way to achieve Level 2 BIM. How secure is the system? It's encrypted web technology using Microsoft Azure. There will be guidelines issued at the same time in terms of the latest security standard that the Ministry of Justice are publishing. I think it's a PAS 1192 Part 5. And I think that what that will say is maybe don't upload design information to the cloud unless it's got a certain standard. But this is not, the BIM Toolkit doesn't do the design, it does the requirements. Jacob's asking about post-execution. I'm not sure I understand that question. Where's the data held? I think the Azure cloud sort of maps between Ireland and Netherlands on sort of virtual servers. Mike, I don't know the full answer to that question. Can individual names be assigned to roles? From Simon. That may not be in for launch, but what we're wanting to do is against each organization to be able to add different email addresses. So you could have ABC Architects with Simon at ABC Architects, Stephen at ABC Architects, Stephanie at ABC Architects. And by putting the email addresses against the role, they'll get read-only access and be able to see it through the web and not just at team meetings and when it's been sort of printed out. Will it be available? Question from Keith. Available to test prior to the soft launch in April? Yes. Go to our website, join up for the beta testing. Keith, love you to have a play with it and give us some feedback. Tom's asking if in the toolkit, is there just one procurement and appointment for the whole project lifecycle? No, it's a framework that allows any procurement to be put into it. So if I was a small architect doing a £60,000 house extension on a JCT, a homeowner contract, that's fine. And the architect works as the project lead through to a construction stage and then as contract administrator. If it was a PFI hospital, you can use a contractor-led procurement and have the main contractor coming on at the brief stage. So it's a framework that's not tied to procurement. And then some nice comments coming through. I always like the nice comments. Paul, many thanks, great presentation. Ty, thanks. Kieran's asking when it's been released. Soft launch, BIM Show Live, on 8th of April in Manchester. Daniel's asking, is it limited to the UK? It uses UK classification, and the level of definitions have been written to UK practices, but there's no reason why you couldn't use the tool in the Middle East or elsewhere. But it's designed for the UK, but there's nothing stopping you. Paul's asking if Omniclass classification mappings will be added, not for launch, but we're very interested in that, Paul. Really interested in that, because that would then potentially open up opportunities in the United States and places like Middle East and India where maybe they use American classifications. Irfan's asked when you can expect the LOD, LOI stuff. Yep, that's all there on for the soft launch, April the 8th, BIM Show Live. Alex Nesbitt, hi Alex, hope you're keeping well in Turn on Townsend. Things have been good for you over your first 6 months. How different will it be to the latest drafts on the CPIC website? We've listened to feedback over the last 2 or 3 years from manufacturers, from groups like the CIBSI BIM group. The products table in particular has had quite a big restructure. So I'd like to think that when people see the latest version of Uniclass and read the documentation around it, you'll see there's a big difference, and the industry really has been interested in being listened to. In addition, the infrastructure content's really been expanded as well. Scott Beaver, what about civil infrastructure? About a huge amount of the project has been around writing templates, contents, classification for the infrastructure sector. So definitely, Scott. Thanks for a great presentation. See you at BIM Show Live. Thank you, Jim. Very helpful presentation. Like to join the beta testers. Thanks, Keith. Congratulations. We need web-enabled collaboration in the UK for Jacob. Thank you, Jacob. Many thanks for the presentation. Really good. Thank you, Samuel. And a brilliant from Irfan. Thank you, Irfan. Okay, I'll bring that to a halt now. Thank you for everyone for spending the time to listen and watch the presentation, and hopefully you like what you see. And it's a completely free tool that's written for the UK industry, helping the UK industry work at level 2 BIM. And I really hope you like it when it gets its soft launch in April. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.